Welcome to Unfiltered Finance. If you're tired of the financial illusions and ready for the brutal math, you are in exactly the right place. Let's dive in. Let's play a game of Wall Street math. Meet Investor A. He's 20 years old, working an entry-level job, and scrapes together $500 a month to invest. Now meet Investor B. He spends his 20s living large, waits until he's 35, gets a high-paying executive job, and decides to catch up. Investor B aggressively invests $1,000 a month, double what A is putting in. Both stop at age 60. Who wins? Common sense says Investor B because he invested $300,000 out of pocket, compared to A's $240,000. But the stock market doesn't care about common sense. It operates on the brutal geometric laws of compound interest. At age 60, Investor B walks away with $965,000, a solid run. But Investor A? He opens his account to find a staggering $1.76 million. He put in $60,000 less, but beat Investor B by nearly $800,000. Today, we are going to draw the exact mathematical anatomy of the $1.7 million equation, tear apart the "I'll save when I earn more" myth, and show you how to hijack the eighth wonder of the world. To understand this equation, we can't use fake internet guru numbers. We need historical data. Where is this money actually going? It's going into the S&P 500, an index of the 500 largest U.S. companies. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. When you buy an S&P 500 ETF, like Vanguard's VOO, you own a microscopic slice of the entire American economy. From 1926 to 2023, the S&P 500 has averaged an annualized return of roughly 10.2%. If we adjust for a historical 2.5% to 3% inflation rate to maintain your real purchasing power, we are looking at a conservative baseline of about 7.5% to 8.5% real growth. For our $1.7 million equation, we are stress testing the math using a strict 8.5% nominal return. This isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. This is a highly calculated, historically backed wealth machine. The formula driving this is future value equals principal times 1 plus the rate over n to the power of n times t. But a formula is just ink on a whiteboard. Let's see what happens when you bleed for it. Welcome to the grind. This is where 90% of people quit. Investor A is 20, investing his $500 a month. By year 3, he has put in $18,000 of his own money. At an 8.5% return, his total balance is around $20,600. His money has only made him $2,600. It feels pathetic. He could have bought a car. He could have traveled to Europe. Instead, he has a digital number on a screen. By year 5, he's put in $30,000, and his balance is $37,000. The interest is just a trickle. The math curve here is entirely linear. The principal, the money from his own sweat and blood, is doing all the heavy lifting. This is the psychological trap of compounding. The human brain is hardwired to think linearly. 1 plus 1 equals 2. We are terrible at visualizing exponential growth. So, Investor A gets frustrated. Meanwhile, Investor B is 25, buying a new BMW on finance, telling himself he'll invest when his salary bumps up. 10 years pass. Investor B hits 35. He makes 6 figures now. He looks at his bank account and realizes he needs to build wealth. He confidently decides to invest $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. He thinks he can out-earn his lost time. This is what analysts call the delay penalty. It is the most expensive tax in finance. You see, time is the exponent in the compound interest formula. Earning more money only changes the principal, the base, but time is the multiplier. To put this in perspective, if you want to reach $1 million by age 60, and you start at 20, you only need to invest $286 a month. If you wait until you are 40 to start, you have to invest over $1,600 a month to hit the exact same goal. Investor B is bleeding cash to make up for a decade of zero compounding. He is running a marathon with a 100-pound weight vest, while Investor A has already completed half the race. We now arrive at the most critical moment in the timeline, the tipping point. For Investor A, this happens around year 14. He has contributed $84,000 out of pocket. His total portfolio has crossed $150,000. But something magical has shifted underneath the hood. At 8.5%, His portfolio is now generating roughly $12,700 a year in pure interest. Do you see it? He only contributes $6,000 a year, but the interest is paying him double that. The geometric curve is violently separating from the linear curve. The money has cloned itself, and the clones are now having clones. This is what Warren Buffett meant when he said his wealth came from living in America, some lucky genes, and compound interest. Once you cross the tipping point, the math becomes an unstoppable avalanche. The avalanche is coming. Let's see the crossover clash. Let's look at the split screen. It's year 20 of our race. Investor A is 40 years old. He has been investing $500 a month for 20 years. His portfolio is now worth $315,000. Investor B is 40 years old too, but he started at 35. He's been pumping in $1,000 a month for 5 years. His portfolio is worth $75,000. B is getting nervous. He is pouring double the capital into the market, but the gap is widening, not closing. Why? Because of the absolute dollar growth. In year 21, A's $315,000 grows by 8.5%, generating nearly $27,000 in interest alone. B's $75,000 grows by 8.5%, generating just $6,300. Even though B adds $12,000 of his own cash that year, A's total growth still crushes him. You cannot easily out-earn a massive compounding base. The clock runs out. Both men turn 60. The final tally is on the board. Investor B, who started at 35, invested $1,000 a month for 25 years. Total principal invested, $300,000. Final portfolio value at 8.5%, $965,000. A fantastic result, but he falls just shy of the millionaire mark. Now Investor A started at 20, invested just $500 a month for 40 years. Total principal invested, $240,000. Final portfolio value, $1,765,000. Let that sink in. Investor A paid $60,000 less to buy an $800,000 advantage. That $800,000 difference isn't salary. It isn't a bonus. It is the raw, unadulterated premium of time. Every single dollar Investor A put in at age 20 multiplied itself by 26 times. A single $500 investment made at age 20 turned into $13,000 by age 60. Now, I know what half of you are thinking. Great math, but I'm already 35. I don't have a time machine. Am I doomed? Absolutely not, but you need to shift from passive saving to aggressive margin expansion. If you lack time, you must force the principal. You cannot afford the standard 10% savings rate. You need to expand your margin, the gap between your income and expenses, to 30% or 40%. You don't just skip lattes. You optimize the big three: housing, transportation, and food. You drive a 10-year-old Toyota instead of financing a Tesla. You aggressively upskill to increase your top-line revenue and funnel 100% of the raise straight into the market. If Investor B wanted to match Investor A's $1.76 million by age 60, starting at 35, he wouldn't need $1,000 a month. He would need to invest exactly $1,830 every single month. It is painful, but mathematically possible. But before you set up your auto deposits, we must talk about the assassins in the shadows: fees and inflation. Let's look at mutual fund fees. Your friendly bank advisor offers you a fund with a 1% expense ratio. Sounds tiny, right? It's just 1%. Let's run the math on Investor A. If he earns 8.5% gross, but pays a 1% fee, his net return is 7.5%. Over 40 years, that $500 a month doesn't grow to $1.76 million. It grows to $1.34 million. That 1% fee didn't cost you 1% of your wealth. Over 40 years, it compounded and stole $420,000, nearly 24% of your total end value. This is why Wall Street analysts obsess over low-cost index funds and ETFs like Vanguard, which charge 0.03%. Keep your fees near zero. And as for inflation, if you leave that $500 a month in a savings account earning 2%, inflation will silently vaporize your purchasing power, leaving you with the equivalent of pennies. Wealth isn't about picking the next apple or timing the bottom of a recession. It is a game of endurance, discipline, and geometric mathematics. Time is the one asset that the billionaire cannot buy more of. and it is the greatest leverage the 20-year-old possesses. The $1.7 million equation proves that you don't need a massive salary to become a millionaire. You just need to start. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So, what is your next move? Set up a budget, open a brokerage account, buy a broad market index fund, and let the eighth wonder of the world do the heavy lifting. The math guarantees the outcome. All you have to provide is the time. This video is for informational and educational purposes only, not financial advice. All investing carries risk of loss. Do your own research. If you value the brutal truth over financial illusions, then hit subscribe today. To see how this math applies to your next move, click the video on your screen. I will see you there.